Welcome, listeners. I'm Silas, your sleepy storyteller, pulling you down the rabbit hole of time where dreams and memories intertwine. If you enjoy these videos, please tap the like button. It really helps. Also, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can keep drifting along on your sleepy journey through history. And before we wander down the rabbit hole, share your city and time in the comments. I love imagining our journey, threading through every ticking clock. Now, take a moment to find a comfortable resting position. Close your eyes gently, and in your own time, allow yourself to sink into the quiet atmosphere of the past as we begin our slow journey together. Tonight, we're stepping back to the summer of 1864 on a quiet walk through the streets of Chambersburg just before the Confederate raid. The air is cool this morning, and the first light rests gently over the Creek. A thin veil of mist clings to the water, drifting in slow ribbons that dissolve with each rising beam of the sun. I step carefully along the soft earth at the edge of the stream, the grass wet with dew, each blade bending beneath my boots before springing upright again. The creek murmurs softly, water tumbling over smooth stones, carrying with it the scents of wet earth and the faint sweetness of wildflowers growing along the banks. For a while, I walk quietly, letting the gentle rhythm of the water guide my pace. The song of a meadowlark carries across the stillness, joined by the rustle of leaves as a breeze stirs through the trees. It is peaceful here, sheltered in the folds of nature, as though the troubles of the wider world have not yet intruded. The air carries the freshness of early summer, and the morning sun glimmers in shifting patches across the surface of the creek. And yet, beneath this beauty, there is a weight, a quiet unease that lingers over Chambersburg. The war, though fought in distant valleys and across great rivers, has touched this place before. Just a year earlier, Confederate cavalry had ridden close, and families spoke of them still, remembering how quickly war can arrive at the doorstep. The Conococheague itself has witnessed centuries of change, its waters once guiding native peoples, later serving as a landmark for settlers carving out new homes. Now, in 1864, it continues its patient course, unaware of the strife of men. As I follow the creek's bend, the town begins to rise more distinctly in view. Roof lines and chimneys lift above the treetops, and the faint sound of a wagon wheel carries from the distance. A farmer drives his team across the far bank, the horses moving steadily, their hooves sinking into the damp soil. Beyond him, I can see the edge of fields already brightening under the sun. Neat rows of corn stretching in long green corridors, bordered by wooden fences leaning slightly with age. The people of Chambersburg have always lived close to this water. The creek has been a source of life, for fishing, for the mills that once turned along its banks, and for the countless children who've waded here on warm afternoons. Standing by it now, it feels timeless, an anchor against the uncertainty of the present. Still, whispers of danger drift even here. Families who gather water from this stream exchange words in hushed tones, wondering how long before soldiers once more find their way northward. A blue heron rises suddenly from the shallows, its wings stretching wide, scattering droplets of water into the air. I pause to watch as it glides gracefully down the length of the creek before disappearing behind a screen of trees. In the distance, the steeple of a church begins to emerge, slim and pale against the morning sky. The town is close now. My steps carry me off the softer grass and onto a narrow path that winds between hedgerows, leading toward the first cluster of homes. The streets of Chambersburg are just beginning to stir. Smoke curls upward from a few chimneys, carrying with it the scent of breakfast fires. A rooster calls somewhere behind a barn, and the faint creak of a door signals the start of another day. To a passerby, it might seem an ordinary morning in a quiet Pennsylvania town. Yet, beneath this ordinary scene lies the shadow of war, creeping closer with each week that passes. The Conococheague has seen soldiers before, men in gray and men in blue, both riding hard along these banks. Only last year, in 1863, Confederate troops under General Jenkins rode into town during their push north, demanding supplies and striking fear into the residents. Though they soon withdrew, the memory lingers like a stain. Farmers and merchants alike know that the borders between safety and danger have grown fragile. Still, for the moment, the town's heartbeat is steady. Children chase one another in a yard, their laughter ringing out against the wooden fences. A woman hangs fresh linens across a line, their white folds catching the breeze like sails on a distant sea. I walk on slowly, my eyes taking in every small detail, letting the quiet rhythm of daily life mingle with the history that presses in around it. I pass a garden where beans climb high against a trellis and sunflowers stand tall, their golden faces turned toward the rising sun. The scent of lilacs drifts over the fence, mingling with the earthy smell of tilled soil. It is hard to imagine that in only a short time, flames will touch this soil, and smoke will cloud the very air that now smells so sweet. The Conococheague will continue to flow, but the streets I am approaching will be changed forever. The road bends gently, carrying me closer to the heart of town. The sound of the creek fades behind me, replaced by the sharper echoes of hooves striking cobblestone. A rider trots past, tipping his hat, his horse's breath misting in the cool air. His coat is worn, his eyes tired. Many here feel the war's burden, not only in rumors, but in their own families. Sons and brothers gone to the front. Wives and mothers keeping farms and shops alive in their absence. The first true buildings of Chambersburg now stand before me. Their brick facades are lit warmly by the sun, casting long shadows across the street. Some are shops just opening their doors. Others are homes where curtains twitch as children peer curiously at the street below. A wagon loaded with barrels rattles past, its iron wheels clattering against the stone, the driver urging his team forward with a quiet word. Though it feels a place of calm industry, I cannot help but sense the fragility beneath the surface. The Franklin County Courthouse, not far from here, represents the town's order and strength. Yet it, too, will one day fall to fire. The Bank of Chambersburg, where money is counted and secured, cannot buy protection against the coming threat. And the quiet printery, its presses silent for now, will also know destruction. But here, in this first light of day, I walk among them as they stand whole. The cobblestones are damp beneath my feet, carrying the smell of last night's rain. Birds perch along the eaves of buildings, their calls bright and cheerful, unaware of what history will bring. The town breathes with life, ordinary and beautiful in its simplicity. The Conococheague lies behind me now, its waters still winding their endless course. Ahead, the shaded lanes of Chambersburg stretch out, lined with trees whose leaves whisper in the morning air. I follow their call, stepping further into the heart of the town, where the sounds of hammers and voices rise with the sun. The walk continues, leading me deeper into the streets where history and daily life entwine, each step carrying me closer to the stories waiting to be told. The street narrows as I move deeper into Chambersburg, and soon the bustle of wagons and voices softens behind me. The cobblestones give way to packed earth, worn smooth by countless footsteps, and I find myself walking along a quieter lane. Overhead, branches knit together into a soft canopy, their leaves shifting in the morning breeze, scattering patches of shade across the ground. The air here is cooler, fragrant with lilacs and the faint tang of apple blossoms drifting from hidden orchards nearby. A sparrow darts from one fence post to another, its wings beating so quickly they blur against the light. The fences themselves lean this way and that, some freshly mended with pale wood, others gray with age, their tops roughened by rain and weather. Between them, gardens stretch outward, small but carefully tended. Peas climb their supports in orderly rows, onions push green shoots above the soil, and neat clusters of herbs release sharp scents when brushed by the wind. The path here feels almost private, as if I've slipped into the quieter rhythm of the town. A woman kneels in her garden, gathering lettuce leaves into her apron, her bonnet tilted to shield her face from the rising sun. She glances up only briefly as I pass, nodding with the faint smile of someone too accustomed to labor to pause for long. Behind her, a child tugs at a watering can, almost too large for his hands, spilling more water onto the path than onto the plants. His laughter rises brightly before being hushed by his mother's gentle word. The scene could belong to any summer in any quiet town, yet beneath it lies the press of history. Chambersburg has stood since the mid-1700s, founded at a crossroads of trade and travel. Its people are used to the steady rhythm of farming, of markets, of faith and family. But this is not an ordinary summer. Whispers of war move even through these shaded lanes. The memory of Confederate cavalry passing through just a year ago has not been erased. Families who hang their wash or mend their fences know too well how swiftly soldiers can ride in, demanding food, money, or shelter. I pause at a gate where roses climb in a tangled arch, their petals deep red and soft with dew. They spill fragrance into the morning air, masking for a moment the sharper smells of livestock that drift from a nearby yard. Just beyond, an old hound sleeps in the dust, his ears twitching at the sound of passing footsteps. Behind him rises a house of sturdy stone, its walls lined with ivy that has grown unchecked across the years. Such houses have stood through hard winters and floods, and yet the question lingers whether they will withstand the fire soon to come. The lane curves gently, shaded by tall maples. Their roots push at the earth, cracking the edges of the path, reminding me that nature continues its quiet work regardless of men's plans. Overhead, their leaves filter the light into shifting patterns, dappling my hands as I move forward. I trail my fingers along a wooden fence, its surface rough and splintered, warm where the sun touches it. Beyond the fence, I glimpse neat rows of cabbages, their broad leaves beaded with droplets that sparkle like glass. I think of how many families in Chambersburg tend gardens such as these, relying on them not only for food, but for a measure of security in uncertain times. With soldiers marching across Pennsylvania and Virginia, supplies are never guaranteed. What cannot be bought in the market must be coaxed from the soil. These gardens are more than ornament. They are a lifeline, a hedge against hunger when wagons cannot pass freely on the roads. Children dart across a yard ahead, their bare feet striking the packed earth with quick, light sounds. They chase one another around a mulberry tree heavy with fruit, their hands and mouths stained purple from their spoils. The tree's branches sag with the weight of ripening berries, and a cluster of sparrows flits among the leaves, joining in the feast. Their cries mingle with the children's laughter until the sound becomes a single note of joy. Watching them, it is easy to forget the fears that hang over this town. Yet even here, their mothers stand close by, their eyes glancing often toward the road, watchful for signs of riders that might bring unwelcome news. I continue slowly, savoring the shifting scents of the lane. Honeysuckle drapes across a fence in golden cascades, its sweetness clinging thickly to the air. Farther along, a cherry tree rises, its branches tipped with fruit still hard and pale, not yet ready to harvest. Bees drift lazily from blossom to blossom, their hum blending with the rustle of leaves. These small details create a tapestry of life too rich to imagine losing, yet loss hangs close. The Confederates, who will soon march into Chambersburg, will not see these gardens as lifelines or treasures. To them, they will be supplies to seize or destroy, symbols of a Union town to be punished. The German Reformed Church lies somewhere beyond these lanes, its printery already silent at this hour. From presses there, sermons and pamphlets have been set into ink, words that speak of faith, resilience, and in some cases, loyalty to the Union cause. Such words, printed on paper and carried from hand to hand, can become powerful enough that when destruction comes, the press itself will not be spared. As I pass by the quieter gardens, I imagine how those presses must sound when running. The clatter of type and the heavy rhythm of the press echoing through the air, carrying messages that some would rather silence. The shaded lane opens briefly into a stretch of sunlit space, where a broad pasture lies to the left. A horse grazes near the fence, flicking its tail lazily at flies. Its coat shines deep brown in the light, and its eyes follow me calmly as I pass. In the distance, a farmer works with a scythe, the steady swish of the blade marking his progress through the tall grass. He pauses to wipe his brow, straightening his back before bending once more to the labor. Work continues here as it must, even with uncertainty on the horizon. Each step forward carries me deeper into the weave of daily life. Laundry flutters on a line, catching the sun like bright banners. The smell of fresh bread drifts faintly from a kitchen window. A cart piled with firewood creaks under the weight as it rolls toward a backyard shed. These details ground the town, anchoring it in the rhythms of survival and routine. They are the sights and scents that the people of Chambersburg will remember when the ordinary is stripped away. The shaded lane narrows once more, the fences crowding closer, the air thick with the mingled scents of garden soil and flowering vines. The hush here is broken only by the steady beat of a woodpecker tapping high in an elm tree, its sound echoing faintly against the houses. I let the rhythm guide my steps as the lane draws me onward, carrying me out of this pocket of quiet toward the more open heart of town. Ahead, the path begins to widen, and the silhouettes of larger buildings rise against the sun. The Franklin County Courthouse waits somewhere near, its bell tower just visible above the treetops. The cool shade gives way to warmer light as I move toward the square. The garden fences end, and the open stone walls of the town center begin to appear. The transition is subtle, but the feeling shifts from the secluded calm of private lives into the weight of public space. The courthouse, the bank, the square itself, these are places where the private fears of families become the public burdens of a town. My feet carry me steadily onward, from the shelter of trees into the heart of Chambersburg, where the next chapter of this walk begins. The narrow lane opens gradually into a broader street, where the quiet rustle of gardens gives way to the measured hum of the town. The shade of trees thins, replaced by sunlight that falls across wide cobblestones, warming their damp surfaces until they glisten faintly. My steps echo differently here, sharper, more distinct, as if the stones themselves mark the shift from private life to public square. Ahead, the town stretches out with greater breadth. Storefronts rise in orderly rows, their wooden signs creaking softly at iron hooks as the wind stirs them. A milliner's window displays neat rows of bonnets. A shoemaker leans in his doorway, hammer paused in hand as he greets a passing neighbor. Wagons jostle across the square, their wheels rattling as drivers guide them carefully between pedestrians. Horses stamp impatiently, their harness bells chiming in irregular rhythm. The air holds the mingled scents of horse sweat, fresh bread from a nearby bakery, and the faint sharpness of leather and oil from a smithy shop. Above this lively weave of sound and smell rises the Franklin County Courthouse. Its bell tower catches the morning light, gleaming pale against the blue of the sky. The building stands with a gravity that commands attention, its brick walls solid, its windows tall and evenly spaced, its entrance framed by pillars that lend it both dignity and permanence. From nearly every angle of town, the courthouse rises as a point of orientation, a landmark as constant as the sun. The square surrounding it is open, ringed by trees that cast long strips of shade across the stones. Their leaves whisper overhead, softening the harsher noises of wagons and voices. Children run across the steps of the courthouse, their shoes tapping quickly before they scatter into the square. A man with papers under his arm ascends the stairs slowly, his coat swinging with his stride, his face intent with the business of the day. This courthouse has long been the town's center, a place where disputes are resolved, records are kept, and justice, in its many forms, is measured out. Within its walls, deeds to land have been signed, marriages registered, wills declared. To the people of Chambersburg, it is more than a building. It is the very heart of civic life. When neighbors gather in the square, the courthouse watches over them, reminding all that their community rests on both law and tradition. Yet, like so much else in this town, its fate is shadowed. It is not only a courthouse, but a symbol of Union authority in a region contested by war. When Confederate troops come, they will see not only brick and mortar, but what it represents. A northern town rooted in law, commerce, and loyalty to the Union cause. And for that, it will burn. For now, however, it still stands, unscarred by flame, its bell silent but ready to ring. I pause at the edge of the square, watching the scene unfold around me. The sound of a blacksmith's hammer rings faintly from down the street. A dog trots through the square, stopping to lap water from a trough before stretching in the sun. Farmers bring their carts closer, their wheels grinding against the stone as they unload barrels of apples and sacks of flour. The square is alive with ordinary commerce, yet behind each ordinary act lies the tension of wartime. Prices climb higher each month, and the rattle of coins in a merchant's pouch seems less secure than before. I walk slowly around the courthouse, tracing the edge of its shadow as it stretches across the cobblestones. The shade feels cool against the warmth of the morning. Birds perch along the gutters, darting down to snatch crumbs from the square before fluttering back to their vantage points. I pause at the base of the courthouse steps, my hand brushing the smooth stone of the railing. The surface is warm where the sun has touched it, but cooler near the shaded side, as if holding within it both the day's promise and its hidden foreboding. On the steps, a pair of soldiers stand in quiet conversation. They wear the blue coats of Union men, their rifles resting nearby, their voices low. Chambersburg has seen men in uniform before, both Union soldiers moving through on their way to the front and Confederate raiders pushing northward. The sight of these two in the square reassures some, unsettles others. Protection feels uncertain when war flows so freely across borders. The courthouse bell tower casts a long line of shadow across the square, pointing almost directly toward the bank of Chambersburg down the street. The alignment is striking, as though law and commerce are tied together in one unbroken chain, and indeed they are. The courthouse holds the records of property, contracts, and rulings, while the bank holds the town's financial lifeblood. Together, they represent stability. But together, too, they will be undone when the raiders demand their ransom. The historical weight of this place presses quietly on my thoughts. In just weeks, Confederate General McCausland will arrive with his men. They will halt before this courthouse and declare their demands: $100,000 in gold or $500,000 in U.S. currency. It is a demand far beyond what this community can provide. And when the town fails to produce the impossible sum, fire will consume this very building, its brick walls cracking, its wooden beams collapsing into ash. What I see now, the busy square, the solid courthouse, the children darting on the steps, will be swept away in smoke and ruin. Yet in this moment, none of that has happened. The courthouse still stands, proud and central, its presence as steady as the Conococheague's flow. Its walls echo only with ordinary footsteps. Clerks carrying records, judges ascending to chambers, citizens entering with disputes to settle. History has not yet demanded its price. I walk on slowly, letting the scene settle around me. The square has its own rhythm, a pulse set by voices calling, wheels clattering, bells chiming faintly in the distance. A breeze carries with it the scent of fresh sawdust from a carpenter's shop, mingling with the sweet undertone of cakes cooling in a bakery window. Each detail speaks of life lived fully in the present, even as the shadow of war stretches closer. The courthouse stands not only as a public building, but as a gathering place. In past years, speeches have been delivered here, calls for union support, announcements of local fairs, even simple community notices read aloud from the steps. Families have gathered in this square during festivals, filling it with music, lanterns, and laughter. Those memories cling invisibly to the stones, even as uncertainty waits to overwrite them. The sun climbs higher, catching the bell tower until it gleams almost too bright to look at directly. The courthouse seems, for this brief moment, invincible. Its brickwork glows warmly, its windows reflecting the clear sky, its presence commanding yet reassuring. People cross the square beneath its gaze, carrying baskets, leading horses, exchanging greetings. It is hard to imagine that so solid a structure could fall to fire. And yet, that is the truth history has written. My steps circle slowly toward the far side of the square, where the road stretches on past the courthouse and toward the bank. The noise of the square lingers behind me, but already the path forward beckons with quieter promise. Trees line the edge of the road again, their shade breaking the heat of the sun, their leaves rustling with a sound like distant rain. The air carries a faint metallic tang, perhaps from the bank's iron doors, or perhaps simply from the stones warming underfoot. The courthouse remains behind me, its bell tower rising steadily above the rooftops, visible even as I move farther along. It watches, unknowing of what is to come, but still standing firm for the moment. My feet carry me onward, from the heart of the town's justice to the threshold of its commerce, where the Bank of Chambersburg waits along the road. The walk continues, unbroken, as history and daily life weave together, step by step. The square begins to thin as I drift beyond the courthouse, the lively noise softening into a steadier rhythm of footsteps and hooves along the cobblestones. The sun climbs higher now, falling squarely on the brick facades of buildings that stand shoulder to shoulder, their shutters bright with fresh paint, their signs swaying gently in the morning air. The road ahead opens toward a broader space. The market square and the Bank of Chambersburg rises prominently along the way, its structure more reserved than the courthouse, but no less commanding. The sound here is different, fuller, more layered. Voices overlap in steady murmur, calling prices, greeting neighbors, bargaining over produce. The creak of cartwheels joins the lowing of cattle penned for sale, the cluck of chickens in wicker cages, the occasional bray of a mule. The smells, too, are richer. Fresh hay scattered for animals, the sweetness of peaches piled high on a cart, the salt tang of cured meats hung in a stall. Everything mingles in the warm air, forming a tapestry of life that clings to this part of town. As I walk, the bank looms into clearer view. Its lines are simple yet firm, a building designed to project strength and permanence. Tall windows face the square, their glass catching the sunlight, while the heavy iron doors remain closed for the moment, promising security within. For the people of Chambersburg, this bank holds not only money, but trust. Trust that their savings, their earnings, their fragile security can be guarded against the turmoil of the wider world. Yet even the strongest vault cannot withstand what is coming. Confederate soldiers will see this place not as protection, but as a symbol of wealth, a target for their ransom demands. The thought lingers as I trace the edges of the square. Merchants have set up stalls beneath canvas awnings that ripple softly in the breeze. Baskets overflow with early summer vegetables. Beans, cucumbers, onions, still streaked with soil. A woman with her sleeves rolled high stands behind one stall, her voice warm as she offers a measure of berries to a customer. Children dart between the stalls, clutching coins in their small fists, eyes bright as they weigh which sweet to buy. Their laughter rises above the bargaining voices like birdsong above steady wind. I pause near a trough where horses drink, their lips stirring the water into ripples. A boy tends them, brushing their coats with quick, practiced strokes, though his eyes often lift toward the market stalls as if longing to run free among them. The ordinary scenes of the square press close around me, alive with a rhythm that feels eternal. Yet I know it is not eternal. On a morning not far from this one, fire will race across these streets. Flames will swallow the bank, the courthouse, the shops, the stalls, leaving only charred timbers and ash where laughter and voices now rise. The history of this square is layered, built across decades of labor and growth. Since Chambersburg's founding, this has been the place where farmers and townspeople meet, where crops grown in surrounding fields are exchanged for goods crafted in workshops. Here, wagons from the countryside unload barrels of flour, while shopkeepers sell cloth, tools, and books. It is a crossroads in every sense, of economy, of community, of the very lifeblood of the town. To stand in the market is to feel the pulse of Chambersburg itself. And yet, it is also the very stage on which destruction will be carried out. When General McCausland brings his men, they will stand near this bank, in sight of these stalls, and issue their demand. $100,000 in gold, or $500,000 in U.S. currency. The impossible weight of that figure will fall on every family, every shop, every farm connected to this square. The town cannot pay, and when payment is not made, the fire will begin here, spreading outward like a storm unleashed. But today, that storm is still far off, and life moves forward with unassuming grace. A fiddler plays at the edge of the square, his case open for coins. His bow glides across the strings in a tune that is bright yet edged with melancholy. People pause as they pass, some smiling, some tapping their feet briefly before moving on with baskets in hand. The notes float into the air, mingling with the shouts of merchants and the clip of hooves, softening the sharp edges of commerce with music's gentler thread. The bank stands quiet, its walls bearing witness to the scene. I let my gaze rest on the iron door for a moment, its weighty presence catching the light like the surface of a river stone. How many transactions have passed through it? How many debts tallied, notes signed, wages deposited? To those who enter, it represents stability, perhaps even pride. And that is precisely why it will be destroyed. To burn the bank is to scorch the heart of the town's confidence, to prove that even in the north, wealth and order are fragile against fire and steel. I move past the bank's stern facade into the bustle of the square itself. The space opens wide, framed by buildings whose second stories lean slightly forward, shading the shops below. A wheelwright's hammer rings sharply, carrying across the square. A vendor lifts a watermelon with a grunt, setting it atop a crate for display. A pair of geese, loose from a pen, waddle noisily through the crowd, drawing laughter from children and curses from a farmer who hurries after them. The square holds both order and chaos, woven together in a dance that repeats with each market day. I pause near a bench beneath a sycamore tree, its branches casting broad patches of shade across the cobblestones. The leaves shift overhead, their undersides pale against the sun, their rustling a quiet counterpoint to the louder voices of the market. The bench bears the worn marks of countless occupants, traders, travelers, townsfolk pausing to rest. I sit briefly, feeling the wood warmed by the sun, watching the flow of people. Each carries not only goods, but stories. A soldier on leave, carrying cloth for his wife. A farmer's daughter, holding carefully to a crock of butter. A merchant's boy, running with a bundle of letters tucked under his arm. These lives, so ordinary in their detail, are the fabric of Chambersburg. And it is this fabric that will be torn when fire sweeps through. The market's cries will give way to screams, its smells of fruit and bread to acrid smoke. The square, once so alive, will be a hollow shell. Even so, memory will linger. People will remember standing here, just as I do now, seeing the bank solid and proud, hearing the fiddler's tune, tasting peaches sold by a farmer whose orchard will one day stand bare. The sun leans higher overhead, shadows shortening, the square brightening in its heat. Merchants wipe their brows with kerchiefs, and the smell of dust rises more sharply from the cobblestones. The heat shimmers faintly above wagon wheels, blurring their outlines as they turn. Yet in the midst of this warmth, a breeze carries faintly the scent of water, a reminder of the Conococheague still winding not far from here, cooling the edges of town. Even in the heart of commerce, nature threads its way silently, its breath moving through the square in subtle currents. My steps carry me forward once more, weaving between wagons and stalls, past the geese now caught and tied again, past the fiddler packing away his bow. The path draws me toward quieter streets beyond the square, where the noise of trade and bargaining gives way to more subdued corners of the town. Ahead lies the printery of the German Reformed Church, its presses silent for the moment, but heavy with meaning. The road narrows again, shaded once more by overhanging trees and the long reach of gables. The market fades behind me, but its memory lingers in the air, and my walk continues into the hush of quieter streets. The noise of the market softens as I leave its broad openness behind. My steps draw me into narrower lanes where the air feels cooler, the shadows deeper. The cobblestones here are less worn, the sound of wheels less frequent. Houses lean close to the street, their shutters open to let the day in, their windowsills crowded with geraniums, violets, and ivy spilling over in soft cascades of green. A hush settles in, broken only by the occasional murmur of a voice within, or the slow creak of a rocking chair from a shaded porch. The breeze carries with it the smell of lilacs blooming at a corner fence, mingling with the faint scent of ink that drifts from a small brick building up ahead. Birds chatter in the trees overhead, sparrows flitting from branch to branch, a robin calling steadily from a rooftop perch. Compared to the energy of the square, these streets breathe at a gentler pace, the rhythm of domestic life replacing the commerce and bargaining behind me. I notice how the light has shifted. Here, where the buildings and taller trees close around the street, the sun filters through in patches, dappling walls and pavement with a shifting pattern. It feels as though the town itself is guiding me inward, away from the spectacle of trade into the quieter heart of thought and reflection. Ahead, a sign creaks faintly on its iron bracket, its lettering worn by weather, but still clear enough to read: the printer's office of the German Reformed Church. The building is modest, smaller than the courthouse or the bank, yet it carries a certain quiet weight. Its windows are broad, to let in light for the careful work inside. Behind those panes, presses once clattered rhythmically, filling the rooms with the steady heartbeat of ink striking paper. In a town like Chambersburg, the printery was more than a workshop. It was a voice. Pamphlets, sermons, newspapers, notices of meetings, accounts of battles far from here, all found their way into the lives of townsfolk through this door. I pause before it now, my hand brushing the worn wood of the frame, the grain polished smooth where countless others have entered before. A faint scent of old paper seems to linger, mingling with the heavier perfume of lilac and honeysuckle from a garden just across the lane. The contrast is striking, the delicate bloom of nature and the enduring scent of ink and effort, each with its own claim on permanence. The history bound up in this printery is subtle yet profound. From these presses, news of the nation's struggles would have spread across Franklin County. The debates of Congress, Lincoln's proclamations, reports from Gettysburg, only a short distance to the east. Sheet of paper that left the printer's door carried not just words, but influence, shaping how people thought, how they prayed, how they understood themselves within the great conflict of the age. In 1864, when Confederate soldiers swept into Chambersburg, they understood this power. To silence presses was to silence a voice of the Union, to snuff out the written word that bound communities together. This printery, along with others in town, was marked as a place of consequence, as much a target as banks and warehouses. When the fire came, flames licked across these bricks, curling paper into ash, warping the very tools of printing. The quiet streets where I now stand glowed red with destruction, the smell of charred ink and wood hanging heavy in the air. Yet now, in this gentle moment, it is not destruction that fills my senses, but a living calm. A cat slinks along the edge of a fence, its tail flicking lazily as it disappears beneath a shrub. Farther on, laundry flutters on a line strung between two gables, white shirts and linens lifting like sails against the sky. A woman's voice carries softly as she hums while working in her garden, the low rasp of her hoe against the soil blending with birdsong above. Life here feels as rooted as the oak tree, whose branches spread wide across the street, casting an arching canopy overhead. The press of history still lingers, though. I imagine the townspeople of Chambersburg walking this same street during the war years, pausing at this very door to collect a paper that might bear grim news of casualties or the rare light of a Union victory. Each broadside nailed to a post, each handbill tucked into a pocket, carried weight heavier than its paper frame. For families with sons at the front, the printer's work was a lifeline to understanding, however painfully, where the war had reached. I take a few steps closer and run my hand along the brick wall, cool beneath the morning shade. The texture of the clay, rough against my fingertips, feels almost like a memory itself. Each brick holding stories of words printed, sermons shared, debates stirred. To burn a printery is to strike not only at a building, but at memory itself, at the thread of communication that knits a town together. That, too, was part of the Confederates' intent, to leave Chambersburg not just ruined in body, but diminished in spirit. A breeze shifts through the lane, carrying with it the smell of bread baking in some nearby oven, blending with the faint metallic tang of the press inside. I close my eyes for a moment and hear it as it must have sounded. The crank of the lever, the heavy press striking, the sheets shuffling as they dried, set aside in neat stacks. A boy might have run through the door, his arms full of printed sheets still smelling of ink, hurrying to deliver them to shops and homes. His footsteps would have echoed on the same stones where mine now fall, part of a rhythm that tied this quiet street to the larger currents of the nation. The town itself seems to hold its breath here. The clamor of the square feels distant, replaced by this inward space where thought gathers, where words once leapt from type to page to hand to mind. Even the gardens that line the street seem hushed, their blossoms nodding gently, as if listening to something deeper than mere wind. The printer's door, plain and wooden, becomes almost a threshold into that history, a place where the everyday brushed against the eternal. I linger a while, letting the quiet sink in. A sparrow lands on the signboard, chirping once before taking off again. The light shifts across the lane, stretching the shadows of the gables farther down the road. The day continues, yet here time feels suspended, the air weighted with both fragrance and memory. The printer's office may be modest, but its presence in Chambersburg's story is anything but. When the fire came, the presses would have fallen silent. Paper turned brittle and black, the wooden frames of type scorched. Yet even as smoke rose into the sky, the words that had been printed here could not be unmade. They lingered in memory, carried in conversations, remembered lines, convictions too strong to burn away. The Confederates may have reduced brick and wood to ruins, but they could not erase the voice that had already spoken through these streets. I step back from the door and glance once more at the quiet houses nearby. Children's toys lie scattered in a patch of yard. A doll's carriage tipped gently on its side. A dog dozes in the shade of a porch, lifting its head only briefly to watch me pass. Life flows on, even where memory runs deep. The ordinary weaves itself with the historical, just as ink once soaked into paper here, binding thought with matter. The road stretches farther ahead, curving gently, leading me out of the shade of the printery's lane. As I follow it, the light brightens once again, the hush lifting, replaced by the more open space of streets that carry me onward. The quiet behind me lingers in spirit, even as new sounds and sights begin to stir at the edges of hearing. My walk continues, carrying the balance of memory and nature forward into the unfolding town. The lane narrows once more before opening into a wider street, and as I follow its curve, the light shifts noticeably. The afternoon has begun to soften. Shadows stretch long across the cobbles, slanting from chimneys and gables, weaving dark patterns that move with the sway of leaves overhead. The air, once bright with the chatter of sparrows, now carries a slower, quieter rhythm. The faint rustle of a breeze through elms, the low murmur of a distant cart making its way toward the edge of town. The color of the sky has taken on a richer hue. The pale blue of midday deepens toward a mellow gold, brushed with the faintest threads of rose along the horizon. The town seems to breathe differently now, as if preparing to rest. The stones beneath my steps are still warm from the sun, yet there is already a coolness rising, carried by the evening wind. Ahead, the street bends toward a cluster of homes, their gardens lush and tended, their fences lined with late summer blooms. The scent of roses lingers strongest, mingling with the sharper note of mint from a small patch by a doorway. A cat curls itself upon a windowsill, stretching lazily, half asleep in the glow of the fading sun. From a porch nearby comes the sound of gentle rocking, the slow squeak of wood, and the soft laughter of two voices talking in the hush of the evening. It is in moments like these that the contrast between Chambersburg's peace and its memory of turmoil feels most profound. For all its present quiet, this town still carries the weight of July 30th, 1864. The day when fire swept across its streets. The flames did not distinguish between homes and shops, banks and churches. Nearly 500 structures were burned. Families fled, carrying what they could, their footsteps echoing against the very same stones I walk upon now. The courthouse's bell, which had rung out across the square for decades, fell silent in the smoke. And yet, even in the face of such devastation, life returned. As the smoke cleared, as embers cooled to ash, the people of Chambersburg began to rebuild. The town that had seen its heart reduced to ruins gathered its strength, stone by stone, beam by beam, word by word. From ashes rose new walls, and from grief grew resilience. The town around me, these houses, these streets, stand as quiet testimony that ruin does not have the last word. A crow wings overhead, its call sharp against the softening air. I watch its shadow sweep across the ground before me, long and thin, then vanish against the trees at the end of the road. The breeze stirs again, carrying the smell of earth and wood smoke, faint traces of meals being prepared in kitchens where families gather to end their day. The dimming afternoon gathers all these threads together. weaving them into a tapestry of stillness and memory. I pause near a small garden where sunflowers turn their heavy heads downward, their golden faces darkening as the sun drops lower. The bees that had busied themselves there all day are fewer now, drifting lazily back to their hive. A wooden gate creaks gently as it shifts in the wind, its latch worn smooth by countless hands. Each small detail seems heightened in this fading light, as if the town itself wishes to leave me with one last, lingering impression before the night folds in. The history here whispers not only of loss, but also of endurance. In the aftermath of the burning, it was not only buildings that were rebuilt, but also trust, hope, and community. The presses that had fallen silent began again to print. Shops reopened, children's laughter returned to the streets, and church bells rang once more across the valley. To walk Chambersburg in the late afternoon is to feel both the sorrow of its past and the quiet triumph of its persistence. The street bends once more, leading me toward a gentle rise. As I climb, the view opens across the rooftops. The spire of the courthouse visible in the distance, silhouetted now against the darkening sky. The golden light seems to gather upon it, as if offering a benediction before slipping away. To the west, the mountains glow with the last fire of the sun, their ridges outlined in amber. The town rests in their shadow, cradled between history and horizon. A hush spreads deeper with each passing moment. Even the birds grow quieter, their evening calls spaced farther apart, until only the occasional trill breaks the silence. The very air feels thicker, as though time itself has slowed. Each step I take carries me not only forward through the street, but also gently downward into rest, as the town surrenders itself to the coming night. I linger at a corner where an old oak tree stands, its branches arching wide, sheltering a bench worn smooth by years of use. I sit for a moment, feeling the wooden slats beneath me, watching the shifting colors of the sky. The first hints of evening stars appear, faint pricks of light above the fading blue. Children's laughter carries faintly from somewhere down the lane, then quiets as doors close and lamps glow behind shutters. The resilience of Chambersburg feels alive in this twilight. Though the fire of war once consumed its streets, it could not consume its spirit. The people who walked here before me rebuilt not only for themselves, but for all who would come after, so that life could once again move with the steady rhythm of morning to night, season to season. To walk here is to share in that rhythm, to be folded into the quiet pulse of a town that endured. The light continues to fade. The gold deepens into rose, the rose into violet, until at last the edges of the sky darken into indigo. The cobblestones beneath me, once bright with sunlight, now gleam faintly in the cool glow of the first moonrise. The town settles fully into its rest, each window lit like a lantern, each house a haven. I rise and take my final steps, feeling the evening gather close around me. The journey has wound its way from open square to courthouse, from bank to market, from printer's door to these dimming streets. Each step has carried not only distance, but memory, a weaving together of nature's calm and history's weight. And now, As the last of the day gives itself to night, the walk itself draws gently to its end. The air is still, the street is quiet, the day has dimmed, and Chambersburg rests. Rest easy, friends. The rabbit hole of time holds many more slow steps. Until we meet again, Silas is signing off.